Deriving from the Latin word limen, literally meaning threshold, liminal spaces are transitional states or places. The in-between, if you will. Neither here nor there. A simple example demonstrating this concept would be a hallway in a hotel. You are not in the lobby, nor are you in your room yet. You are transitioning from one area to another. Liminal spacing began to take over the internet in 2019. I would be quite surprised if you told me you've never seen this photo before. The original Backrooms photo. The thing that started it all. Now, I could go into depth about the origin of this photo, but that's not really what I want to do in this video. There is already so much different content out there for the origins of liminal spacing. So my aim is not a history lesson. Rather, I would like to discuss different elements of liminal spacing as a whole. So there will be 3 sections to this video. Section 1 will focus on traditional liminality, focusing on questions like why are these spaces inviting for some people but foreign to others? Or why did this concept even become popular to begin with? Section 2 will be all about the music that incorporates the feelings within liminal spaces. And finally, section 3 will be about what I call the subgenres within liminality. These would be things like dreamcore or hostile liminality. So, now that I hopefully have your attention, let's plunge right into section 1. I want to start off by saying liminal spaces are extremely subjective. That's the beauty of this concept and why people can relate to it in so many different ways. So, the first question I'll attempt to answer is why are liminal spaces so inviting? I think when I ask a question like that, a lot of people already have an answer in their head. All of these answers in one shape or form usually boil down to one word:
nostalgia.
If you've ever looked into liminal spaces before, then you would know how closely nostalgia is tied to it. While I am certainly not the first person to point this out, I think it's still an important aspect to go over. The dictionary definition of nostalgia is a sentimental longing or wistful affection for the past, typically for a period or place with happy personal associations. Liminal spaces play on this concept because of the places often depicted. These older or more vintage styles are not as prevalent today, but for the people who did grow up during this time when these styles were used, it strikes a chord. It gives you the feeling of, hey, I remember something like that. This then triggers associated memories with these places. A simpler time when you were just a kid. It really is incredible that we don't need complicated art to invoke such feelings. The simpleness depicted in liminal spaces is the art itself. People often miss this because of their busy daily lives. Liminal spaces are essentially a pictorial representation of your own memory. Usually not an exact copy, but something very similar. What's more is that liminality is a state of mind, a transition state. So with the lack of context in a lot of liminal space images, it actually represents your inner emotion, a feeling of transitional uncertainty. Many people are familiar with this feeling, so to have that feeling captured in an image is quite powerful. This allows the person viewing the image to form some sort of connection with it, whether it's conscious or not. It can bring a large sense of comfort, literally seeing pictured in front of you where your head is at. This can also help people realize that being lost is okay. Even just recognizing that you are lost can help bring some peace of mind. In a strange way, it helps you ironically feel less lost. But the link between liminality and a transitional mindset can be a double-edged sword. This leads me into my second question. Why do some people find these images slightly alarming? It is because, again, it is a representation of your mindset. You are lost or in a transitional period in your life, and that can be an uncomfortable thought to wrestle with. These types of people would often gravitate more towards the uncertain side of transition. We really don't know what or if something is coming next. That's why it can be scary. Other people might point to the lack of context as a source for fear in these images. Seeing a dead mall with no people can give you a sense of pure isolation. This is where your mind truly can be your biggest enemy. That feeling of, what if something's in here with me, is really hard to shake when you're completely alone in an unfamiliar place. That is why liminal spaces can be frightening for some. It can even be sad for others. Liminal spaces are the juxtaposition between what was and what is. The time and style we live in now is quite different than how it used to be years ago. It reminds people that those times are gone and we live in the now, and there's nothing you or I could do to get back. So the questions of why liminal spaces are frightening to some but comforting for others is exactly why it's so popular today. It gets people talking about their subjective experiences with these images, what it means to them to be in a liminal state. It also helps that if you just take time out of your day and think about liminal spaces, you can find one pretty much anywhere. All you have to do is think about one of 3 things in order to get a good liminal photo: lack of context, transition, or nostalgia. We're doing face cam for this part. So when people talk about liminal spacing, they usually only talk about the physical side of it. Empty rooms, long hallways, familiar places with something missing. But sound is just as important in creating that feeling. And in many cases, it's actually what makes the image more unsettling. Liminal music often focuses on familiarity without progression. The listener recognizes style, melody, and harmony, but the music refuses to go anywhere. There's no clear build-up or resolution, which creates a sense of being stuck in time. A strong example of this is Everywhere at the End of Time by The Caretaker. Okay, wait, pause. Editor William here. For whatever reason, I didn't mention that that's what's been playing in the background this entire video. I just wanted to say this for the people who don't know this album. And if you are one of those people, I highly recommend giving the album a listen for yourself. At least give Stage 1 a listen. The whole project itself is very interesting. Anywho, on with the video. This project specifically uses a lot of degraded ballroom music and jazz recordings. Music once associated with comfort, social spaces, and nostalgia, but the tracks are slowed down, distorted, and looped. Instead of evoking a clear memory, it feels like a memory failing to form. This creates a liminal emotional state. The listener is suspended between recognition and confusion. The music feels personal yet inaccessible. You know it, you just can't reach it. The same suspension appears in post-punk darkwave artists like Molchat Doma. The music is repetitive and minimal, built around rigid rhythms and cold synthesizers. The vocals are often distant or emotionally restrained, with them blending into the background instruments instead of rising above it. The result is that the music feels detached, not empty, but emotionally neutral. This neutrality is key to liminality. There is no clear emotional instruction. The music doesn't specifically tell you how to feel, it leaves space for you to project onto it. Across liminal music, certain techniques appear again and again. Repetition without variation, heavy use of reverb suggesting large open spaces, lo-fi textures that imply age or decay, and melodies that feel familiar but unresolved. These elements mirror the qualities of liminal spaces themselves. They feel temporary, transitional, and abandoned. Not because nothing is there, but because nothing is happening. Liminal music removes narrative momentum. Without a musical destination, the listener becomes aware to their own waiting. That's why this music pairs so naturally with empty homes, parking garages, or abandoned public spaces. The sound reinforces the feeling that time has paused, that the space exists between moments rather than within them. In that sense, liminal music isn't meant to be consumed passively. It creates a psychological environment. You're listening for the payoff, but there isn't one. And that absence is exactly what makes it feel liminal. Next section. Liminality has brought us here. At its simplest, it is a condition of being in between, a pause in structure, time, and meaning. It doesn't explain itself and it doesn't resolve. Instead, it leaves us suspended, waiting for something that never quite arrives. For this threshold, two distinct emotional languages emerge: dreamcore and hostile liminality. Dreamcore turns liminality inward. While empty physical spaces can be utilized for dreamcore, it's nowhere near as prominent as it is in liminal spaces. So this allows dreamcore to present distorted echoes of memory. Liminal spaces are empty thresholds. Dreamcore is different. It isn't about emptiness, it's about memory made strange. It's familiarity without an ounce of explanation. Hence the word dream. These places embody soft colors, looping imagery, and familiar objects stripped out of context. These environments feel intimate, almost gentle, yet deeply unstable. They don't threaten us directly, instead they confuse us emotionally. Dreamcore doesn't ask, "Where are you?" It asks, "When are you?" Or perhaps more precisely, why does this feel personal, even though it doesn't belong to me? The unease in dreamcore heavily plays into recognition without origin. It resembles childhood, nostalgia, or forgotten moments. But nothing fully connects, and it's much more distorted than liminal spaces. Unlike dreamcore, for the most part, liminality still holds a basis in reality. Dreamcore presents a warm but unsettling feeling. Comfort becomes suspicious. Meaning dissolves just as it seems within reach. Hostile liminality moves in the opposite direction. It externalizes the tension that dreamcore internalizes. These spaces feel vast, repetitive, and intentional. The lighting flickers. The geometry seems to stretch endlessly. The silence feels charged, not empty. Unlike dreamcore, there is no emotional softness here, only endurance. The space does not invite reflection, it imposes presence. Where dreamcore blurs memory, hostile liminality erases it. There is no past to return to, and no future implied. Only the sensation of being trapped in an environment that refuses to acknowledge you, yet seems aware that you exist. Together, these forms represent different responses to liminality itself. Dreamcore dissolves the self through colorful, distorted familiarity. Hostile liminality confronts the self through environmental pressure. One whispers and the other watches. And when all the images fade and the silence stretches out, I wish you were here, because even if you don't, these spaces remember you. Hey, if you've made it this far, thank you for watching. This was a big project and I had a blast doing it. There is still so much more you could say about liminal spaces. I just wanted to cover a general overview of the entire topic of liminal spaces. I'm super interested in these things, but again, I probably missed a lot that could have been said. I could have gone in a little bit more to other things like Everywhere at the End of Time. There's so much to say on that as a standalone topic. Please, if you did really enjoy this, like, comment, and subscribe. That would be wonderful. So, thank you so much. I will see you later.